A warm welcome to all of you to this round table on the rise of the social enterprise, from careers to experiences, new pathways, presented by BIMTech in association with the National HRD Network and our knowledge partner Deloitte. I am Dr. Manushi Chaudhary, Head OBHR and Professor at BIMTech, and I am your anchor for this evening. And before we proceed, I have a small request to make. Kindly put your cell phones onto silent mode. Thank you. On behalf of the organizers, we would like to thank each one of you for joining this evening event. And as I stand here and speak to you, I am told there are many others who are supposed to be joining us soon. Since they are caught up in traffic, they are getting late. Beginning on the 12th of December 2011, over the last 7 years, we've organized 27 such roundtables on different themes across various metros in India and received tremendous response from the HR fraternity in all the places. We have compiled the salient deliberations on all such occasions and published 7 reports. The latest one, covering the discussions of last year, has been placed on your tables for your ready reference. And today we bring to you fresh perspectives on the theme, the rise of the social enterprise, from careers to experiences, new pathways, where we aim to share research from Deloitte and insights from our experienced business leaders here. I would now like to invite Dr. H. Chaturvedi, Director, Birla Institute of Management Technology, to deliver the welcome address. With a master's degree in commerce and doctorate in business management from Agra University, Dr. Chaturvedi has more than 38 years of experience in teaching, research, and administration. As a former director with the All India Council for Technical Education, New Delhi, he has been associated with the formulation of policies, planning, regulation, and control of management education, as well as other disciplines under technical education. He is a founder member and alternate president of Education Promotion Society for India, a national platform for eminent educationists, education service providers, and edu entrepreneurs. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Manushi. Respected Dr. Rajan Saxena ji, Shri Rajiv Dubey ji, Dr. Keith D'Souza, Dr. Kamlesh Vyas, who is moderating today's roundtable, Ms. Anjali Bais, and Dr. Jayant Kumar, our esteemed panelists in this roundtable. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is a matter of great pleasure that in this HR roundtable presented by BIMTech in partnership with the National HRD Network and Deloitte, we have amidst us some of the leading thought leaders from the Indian business who have been actively involved in nurturing, engaging, and leading talent. Their views in today's HR roundtable will be extremely relevant since they represent a wide spectrum of leadership in diverse areas. On behalf of BIMTech, NHRDN, and Deloitte, I have great pleasure in welcoming the eminent panelists in HR roundtable and all those stalwarts of the industry who are part of today's deliberations. Our speakers for the day in alphabetical order include Ms. Anjali Bais, Director HR, SKF India, Dr. Jayant Kumar, CHRO Tata Power, Dr. Kamlesh Vyas, Senior Director, Human Capital Deloitte India, Dr. Keith D'Souza, Professor of OB and HR, SPJIMR, Dr. Rajan Saxena, Vice Chancellor and Distinguished Professor, Narsimhanji University, Mumbai, and Mr. Rajiv Dubey, Group President, HR and Corporate Services, and CEO, Aftermarket Sector, Mahindra & Mahindra Limited. They are well known in the industry and academia for their dedicated practice and research. I welcome them all and request you to welcome them with a huge applause. Friends, there are sweeping global forces which are reshaping the workplace, the workforce, and the nature of work itself. demographic upheavals, the rise of digital technology, rapid business model innovation, and socially driven evolution in the employer-employee relationship are driving change for both HR functions and the organizations they serve. Today's organizations have to cope with a plethora of demands and pressures. The traditional employer-employee relationship is being replaced by the emergence of a diverse workforce ecosystem, a varied portfolio of employees, talent networks, gig workers, and service providers. As you know that this year we have been discussing the latest Deloitte annual survey on HR, and the title of this annual survey report is The Rise of the Social Enterprise. It's a new phenomena in HR domain, and a social enterprise is considered as an organization whose mission combines revenue growth and profit making with the need to respect and support its environment and stakeholders network. This includes listening to, investing in, and actively managing the trends that are shaping today's world. It is an organization that shoulders its responsibility to be a good citizen, both inside and outside the organization, serving as a role model for its peers and promoting a high degree of collaboration at every level of the organization. I am glad this concept of social enterprise, which has been prevalent in India, is now being recognized the world over and is the topic of our discussion today. As technology advances, skills are becoming obsolete faster than ever. But contrary to conventional wisdom, the greatest value now lies beyond purely technical skills. In fact, the most valuable roles are those that enable machines to pair with skilled, cross-disciplinary thinkers to innovate, create, and deliver services. A great positive of social enterprise is the opportunity they afford to people to acquire new skill sets and enhance existing ones. As enterprises adapt themselves to newer products and services, the people involved also adapt and learn new skills. Furthermore, usage and adaptability of ever-changing technologies help improving the existing processes of enterprises and building employee capability and efficiency, thereby enhancing value for all. Organizations and business leaders need to examine, understand, develop, and implement a variety of solutions to support 21st century careers. Companies are now creating learning networks and knowledge sharing systems, using new platforms to curate content sourced both internally and from massive open online courses, popularly known as MOOCs. Successful organizations are providing tailored solutions that empower individuals to reinvent themselves within the company. This helps organizations to retain employees and equip them to meet current and future work demands, powering a new career pathway that benefits both the individual and the organization. Focusing on experiences, new career models, data-driven tools, and L&D offerings will enable companies to develop, retain, and reinvent the right talent at the right time. Today's workforce has become a dynamic ecosystem. These challenges are going to require new ways of thinking by HR professionals across the globe, who will need to update their practices to meet the challenges that will arise. In this scenario, companies need to focus more heavily on career strategies, talent mobility, and organizational ecosystem and networks to facilitate both individual and organizational reinvention. In a 21st century career, the individual and their experiences take center stage. Instead of a steady progression along a job-based pathways, leading organizations are shifting towards a model that empowers individuals to acquire valuable experiences, explore new roles, and continually reinvent themselves. Empowering people to manage their own careers is essential to attract critical talent, especially as technology shifts the skill landscape. The theme for today's discussion, from careers to experiences, new pathways, will facilitate in ideating how HR can give employees accelerated learning opportunities and a few easy-to-understand choices in their cycle so that they can keep upgrading their capabilities and also make decisions faster in the wake of high-speed changes. I look forward to know the views of our eminent panelists on these pertinent issues during their deliberations. Thank you. My hearty welcome to all of you.
Thank you, sir. Now may I request Dr. Kamlesh Vyas, Senior Director, Human Capital, Deloitte, India, to please join me on stage. Dr. Kamlesh Vyas completed his engineering degree from DC, Delhi, before pursuing his postgraduate program from Staffordshire University, UK. He did his MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur and fellow program in management from MDI Gurgaon. He has over 25 years of experience in business advisory services and leading organizations. He has served clients in over a dozen countries. He specializes in conceptualizing and leading large-scale human capital advisory, leadership development, skill development, and education programs. Prior to Deloitte, he was with Ernst & Young and Towers Watson. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, friends. I'm almost shivering, and not because of the air conditioner. To my mind, this is a topic which is going to define everything that we know about enterprises. And the reason for that is very simple. Today, everybody wants meaning at work. People are looking for careers which is a little beyond the logical mind. In Sanskrit, we say, yo buddhe partatva sa. What is that which is beyond the intellect? What is that which is beyond the calculation of profit and loss, of careers and movements and promotions? To my mind, it is this. It is that seeking that meaningful life. People like to buy products from those companies which are thinking beyond the profit. People would like to work for companies which are thinking beyond the bottom line. People will want to go to companies which do say, we also make steel. And it is this endeavor to seek for enterprises which will force the enterprises to only become social enterprises. So I would like to put up a controversial statement here by saying that if you're not a social enterprise, you're not an enterprise. Because who would like to deal with an anti-social or asocial enterprise? And if enterprises are going to move towards a social enterprise, at least make an effort to, and in the eventual state, all of them do become a social enterprise, they will have people who've come to work for a social enterprise who will seek, therefore, not careers but experiences. And to my mind, the theme and the sub-theme, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, friends, this evening, is a very related concept. We at Deloitte are absolutely delighted to be part of this journey with NHRD and BIMTech. And I'm so glad that this often misunderstood aspect of social enterprise is today in the fore. And I know that the longer I speak, the more I keep you away from a wonderful panel of very, very senior and dear friends that we've got this evening. So I'll try to keep it brief, and then we go over to the panel. And because it's a small group, it's my hearty desire to make it one of the best conferences that all of us have attended, here or that side. So are you all with me? We want to make it the best that we were at. We got the next hour and a half, and that's what we wanted to become. Thank you very much. So I see somebody, keeping his hand raised. As we embark on this journey, and as all of us, question ourselves, a few aspects come up, and I just want to throw a few trends which are there for us to see. And these are not tiny trends. I'm not talking about what happens in the next 2, 3, 4 years. I want to talk about some things which possibly will outlive our own lifetimes. And I want to just talk about 3 trends. The first one is longevity. I was reading a report which says that there are 300,000 people today who are 100 plus. And at least 1/3 of these will live on for 125. And the first person to live for 150 years is already born and is among this group. Now imagine a situation if people are going to regularly live for 120, 125, 130, 140, 150 years. It has got many implications. The first one that comes to my mind is people like me who married early, child marriage at 25, will be married for 125 years. What about insurance? Insurance companies have to get the actuaries out again and they have to redefine it. What about careers? Gone are the days when you retired at 58 and just waited for another 10 years. Now you got to wait for another 80 years, which means you take on a few more careers. So there'll be a second career and a third career. What about families? Every 25 years there is a new generation coming up. So you can add as many grades as you want to add to children. Great-grandchildren. We'll have large families. Possibly require an artificial intelligence to figure out who's a great-grandchildren and who's the great-grandchildren. All of those are implications that we in the human resource function are going to live with. And sometimes I wonder, people talk about human resource function. You know what? A lot of the HR professionals refer to the rest of the organization as business. Are you with me? And then we parallelly say we want to be a business partner. And I sometimes think that it's better to call ourselves business professionals managing the HR function rather than HR function which is supporting the business. As we think about some of these aspects, and I find this sometimes, the HR folks sitting down saying, beating themselves up and feeling guilty and almost like, we are the most useless ones and we are the ones who have to evolve and we are the ones who have to do the conferences and, it seems we are not contributing to business and everybody else is. By the way, has the marketing functions stopped evolving? Has the world of finance reached and arrived in life and there's nothing much to do? What about technology? What about operations and strategy and legal and so on and so forth? So everybody is evolving and so are we. And therefore, as we talk about moving from careers to experiences, it's not just that we are the ones who are laggards and have a lot to do. Everybody is evolving and so are we. I think in that context, it's very important for us in this function to acknowledge that this journey that we are undertaking, there are people who've spent 30, 40, 50 years fighting this cause. They are the ones who've been standing up to the might of the organizations within and for those employees in those organizations. They are the ones who've been changing careers. They are the ones who've been facilitating and mentoring and leading. So when we do all of this and beat down this wonderful function, people's function, it is being unfair to them. So can I request everybody here for a moment to just stand up and give a standing ovation to all the HR folks who have done this for decades for us. So everyone, please, this is for the HR professionals. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please take your seats. And this is also a standing ovation for all the young folks, our student from BIMTech and student from other similar universities who very consciously have taken on this as their to-be careers. It's not that because they ticked the wrong box when they were selecting the choice of the course. They have They've gone for it. And this is what they want. So I think this also goes out to saying, we have a lot to do, but we have done a lot. And I go back to sometimes the comment that President Trump made for Saudi Arabia. You won't survive for 2 weeks without us. Given that the importance, given those as the transcending factors around us of longevity, and I'll throw a few more factors at you. Everybody's talking about the wave 2 technologies, artificial intelligence and big data and analytics and blockchain and cloud and so on and so forth, IoT. And everybody's telling us that our mundane functions will get reduced and we will do higher-end work. A fewer of us would be required to do higher-end thinking and higher-end critical analysis and strategy and stuff like that. Let's extend this logic a little beyond. Fewer and fewer of us would be required to do higher and higher-end work and thinking, which means that in an infinite state, everything will get done and none of us would be required. Which means that a large section of the society would be removed from the work of employment, a few would be employed, and the ones who are employed will have nothing to do, but they will be wealthy, because robots will be working for us, and our paychecks will be written by them and delivered to us. Imagine a situation where we will be employed and wealthy, but without work. I go back to the example just in front of our house, there is this park, and I used to see this gentleman every morning come with his briefcase and a newspaper and a lunchbox, sit there all day, eat his lunch, 5:30, go back home. So I asked him one day, what's happening? He says, I've been in jobs for many years, I retired at 58. I can't be at home. I don't know, I think possibly he can't be at home because, the wife doesn't let him be at home or whatever. He can't be at home. Now, while anecdotal, this is a trend of things to come. We will have people, wealthy, employed, but no work, nowhere to go. What will they do? On the other hand, there is the gaining concept today of the universal basic income, saying that there's enough wealth. By the way, the calculation is that 1/3 of the global defense budget is sufficient for every human being on this planet to be provided a universal basic income, which means everybody gets a little to survive. And this concept, by the way, was tried in Canada and then tried to do it in UK and a few other places, very successful. And the general thinking might be that if everybody's going to be paid, they will not work. They'll just sit down and booze all day. It didn't happen where it was tried. People actually took time off. They learned new things, new skills. They upgraded themselves, reskilled themselves, did social work, etc., etc. They kept themselves busier than they were when they were on paid employment. So universal basic income, longevity, a state of very little work or no work. What will we do in those times? What is the function of human resources in those change contexts? Closer home, this is a little bit of a long shot and it's not going to happen in the immediate, but closer home, as all of us talk about social enterprises, what are the implications? So I'm going to take you through a few slides here. We just spend a couple of minutes and then we launch into a panel discussion. And I must say once again that all of us are equal partners in this crime. We will participate together. We will stop by to take questions, and then this is how we will move in stages today. I submitted to my panel colleagues, and in fact, they also recommended that we'll do it in a very interactive manner. We will, so that it is worth everybody's while today. So very quickly, taking you through some of this content which has been put together. I think first of all, while there are definitions you will see on the screen, to my mind, social enterprise is an enterprise first. It is not a philanthropic organization. It is an organization which first of all does good business, and that it does that good business by doing good. There is a social angle to it. There is a benefit. It's almost like a compassionate organization versus a philanthropic organization. It does its business, does it very well, competes, focuses on the top line and the bottom line, but the underlying theme of that business is doing something good, and that's the social enterprise. It has implications. And it has got multiple implications for whatever we do in the world of business. How are we going to hire people? How are we going to motivate, evaluate their performance, reward, train, and how are they going to exit? How are they going to work with us? Are they going to be regular, usual, traditional employees, or are they going to be more of people who've come to seek an experience, the gig economy, kind of employees? So I think those are all concepts for us in the HR function. There are some processes in the social enterprises which our research at Deloitte brought out. I'm going to mail that report to you, quite bulky, but I think some of those trends are mentioned here. Some of those questions that the report raised are also mentioned here. Goes without saying that the rate of change is like anything else that we've seen ever. The productivity growth is pointing to that direction. The average time frame that people are working on. Gone are the days when there were organizations in a tree structure, 3 people reporting to 1 person, 9 reporting to the 3, 25 to the 9, and so on and so forth. Today, increasingly, we are seeing a concept wherein there are people whose job was the rainmakers to get business and lead organizations, and there is a pool of people. If you like people from amongst that pool, you will deploy them on a project. But even more important, if the people in that pool like you, they'll work for you, otherwise they'll say no. So the hoarding of resources, the traditional approach wherein I own these 20 resources and you own those 22, that's going to disappear, and a lot of places already disappeared. There are 2 pools, and the 2 of us work together if we love to. Maybe the first project I take a chance with you, second time, not again. Therefore, it drives a completely different mindset that must come in amongst the leaders, because these are people who've come to work for a social enterprise. And in that sense, each of them has social micro-enterprise themselves. Today morning, I was at a session and I saw this speaker. He picked up a bottle of water that he had used and he put his name on it. And I saw him during the half day. He was moving that bottle everywhere. To me, he is a social micro-enterprise, because he understands that he left one bottle half filled there and another one here. He is going to cause one more element of environmental footprint. To me, that's an example of a social micro-enterprise in our own lives. And if we can leave that hall today by taking on 5 such ideas that we will do, it could be as small as that plastic bottle being fully used to anything else that we might do in our organization, we would think that this objective to look at social enterprise and careers and experiences would have been successful. So there are themes and there are trends, and some of those are, I think, self-explanatory. The rise of the individual, filling today's leadership gap, leveraging technology for sustainable growth. Those are 3 themes, and within each of those, there are some trends that we see there. The 90% of companies are redesigning their organizational structures to be dynamic, team-centric, and connected. 73% of the respondents told us that the C-suite leaders rarely, if ever, work together on projects or strategic initiatives. But 87% rated C-suite collaboration is the most important aspect of how they like to do business. The power of the individual, those are the trends I was talking about, the workforce ecosystem, the new rewards, the careers to experiences, which happens to be our core theme here, the longevity dividend that we talked about, citizenship and social impact, well-being, robotics and rest of the technologies, hyper-connected workplaces, and people data and what we can do with this. So that's a backgrounder for us. But this is not a matter of the mind. This is a matter of the heart. This is not the matter of the day-to-day. It is the matter of completely changing our approach to how enterprises work and how careers work. Is it that the individuals will work for the enterprises, or is it that the enterprise must make sure that it is working for each one of those individuals? Who is going to employ whom? Is it the companies employing people, or is it the employees who decide that in their experiences evaluation, this company fits well for 1 year, 6 months, 2 days, 2 hours? That's the gig economy for you. So I'm going to stop here. But as I stop, I think, Manasi, can I take your permission to invite the panel members onto the dais? So you're going to do that? Okay. So thank you very much. But we do want to have it a beautiful evening together and interactive.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And to discuss this issue at length, I'll now like to call upon the panelists for this session in alphabetical order. I request Ms. Anjali Bais, Director HR SKF India Limited, to please take her seat on the dais. All the profiles have been shared with all of you, so in the interest of time, I'm not going through all those profiles here. Glad to have you with us here today, ma'am. May I now request Dr. Jayant Kumar, CHRO Tata Power, to please take his seat on the dais. It's indeed a pleasure to have you with us today. I next invite Dr. Keith D'Souza, Professor OB and HR, SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, on the panel. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. May I now request Dr. Rajan Saxena, Vice Chancellor and Distinguished Professor, NMIMS, to please take his seat on the dais. Welcome to the panel, sir. Last but not the least, I invite Mr. Rajiv Dubey, Group President, HR and Corporate Services, and CEO, Aftermarket Sector, Mahindra & Mahindra Limited, to please join the panel here. It's an honor to have you with us today, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be an extremely captivating evening today with this power-packed panel here. You all have been given some notepads here, and in case you have some queries, some questions to ask from our experts here, please jot them down and we'll have volunteers collect them from you. I now hand over the session to Dr. Vyas for further discussions.
Thank you, Professor Manasi. Without much ado, let's give one more round of applause to our wonderful panelists today evening. And as we get started, in the true spirit of partnership, I'll request you to please keep on noting down your questions and kindly hand it over to our volunteers. I think okay, there'll be people around. And don't have to wait for the end of the session to have all your questions in one place. Even if one question comes up, please do feel free to pass those on to us. We will make sure that as soon as the questions reach us, we will try to incorporate them into our discussion and try and do justice to those. If we need any specific clarification, we will ask the person who's asked that question to explain that to us, so kindly do write your name as well. Goes without saying that keep the question precise and direct, so that we can do appropriate treatment to that. So with that, let me invite our panelists to speak on this. And we have been talking, and we thought, what is the best way for us to make it useful for everyone? And the panel, all of us agreed that we will do the session sort of two phases. In the first phase, each of my colleagues here on the panel will present their initial thoughts on specifically what aspect of social enterprise do they see mirroring in their respective organizations. The organization doesn't itself need to be a social enterprise, but what aspects of the organization or what aspects of the social enterprise do they see happening in their respective organizations? And in that larger context, what is it that they could be doing or planning to do or have done in terms of making this transition from careers to experiences for the people who work there? So with those two questions, let's have some initial thoughts. Then, as we said, we will get into a round of questions and ideas from all of you, dear friends in the audience, and then we will go into the second round. So that's our plan for the day. So I think Anjali is already expecting her to be invited first, and it is you for multiple reasons, alphabetically and otherwise. So let's invite Anjali to listen to her wisdom and insights on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kamlesh. Let's see if this is working, yeah. Okay, very, very warm evening to everybody. Thank you very much for setting up such a interesting and pertinent topic for discussion here. Looking at the social enterprise, I completely agree with what you said earlier today about a social enterprise not being just about doing good business, but about doing good. But what it brought to my mind when I heard you say that, Kamlesh, is the fact that we need to dwell a little more about what has changed. So otherwise we are talking about the fact that it's moved from being just beyond profit But what does that therefore mean? So the how behind it. And what comes to my mind is the fact that gone are the days when it was just about grow profitably, grow ahead of the market. But now there's a lot more conversation about how that needs to happen. So the whole fabric or the spirit of it has changed to grow profitably, but through collaboration. And I think that has become a very interesting dimension that's become a differentiator for those organizations that are staying ahead of the curve and continuing to be sustainable over a period of time. And nobody is growing in isolation. It is all through collaboration. Coming specifically to your question on how our organizations are seeing it play out. So at SKF, the core of everything we do is to reduce friction, let's put it that way, in terms of business. So we make bearings, seals, lubricants. So it's about reducing friction, and I think that in itself carries this whole principle of going over and above and beyond to the how of collaborating and growing. The other core principle that we operate on is what we call the principle of care. And what happens when you care in an organization is that you tend to look at it outside in. Because when you care obviously in order to make it meaningful for who you are representing. And therefore, our principle of care cuts across the board. It goes to customers, so it's no longer about just selling products, but helping them win. So that is collaboration. It is about shareholders, of course. It's about the social enterprise that we are talking about, so the social fabric, the environment in which we operate. And as we go through the day-to-day, I can share a lot more about what we've been doing there. It goes also to across the board, whether it is our partners, suppliers, distributors, over and above, just the social enterprise, the environment, shareholders, just about every part of our business. And therefore, it is not just about doing good, but doing good in terms of business and over and above in terms of collaborating and growing together. So I think it's about how much are you a giver in today's environment more than how much are you a receiver. And this goes whether it's in the spirit of sharing knowledge, whether it is in helping your partners win, and in any part of the organization. Therefore, it is about what kind of leadership behavior do you operate in, and so on. And we've done a lot in this space, including in HR. And you were talking a little earlier about, can we think about ourselves being business people in HR? And I can tell you that business is really an outcome. What drives it is behavior, and that's what we do in HR. We drive behavior, we drive a culture that helps people to perform, and therefore we are the business. So business is really an outcome, and we can talk a little more later about how we see it playing out. So HR doesn't, we talk about collaboration and social enterprises, going above and beyond your little box and silo. My teams work very closely to drive business transformation, and some of them also have only one foot in HR, the other is sitting inside business. So we talk a little more, but I don't want to take all the airtime in the opening comments, so I'll sign off for now.
Thank you, Anjali. Thank you. I think that is brilliant. I'm just going to pick up a few words: collaboration, reducing friction, care as a principle, helping partners win, driving through culture and behavior, and we are the business. I think that pretty much to me almost can be written as the core golden principles of social enterprises. Thank you very much, Anjali. Going across to Dr. Keith Saxena, not just because he's sitting next to Anjali, but I thought we'll go right across the spectrum and talk about from the world of academia. So we've heard a view from the world of business. Now let's hear Professor Rajan Saxena.
Thank you very much, Kamlesh. As you very rightly said, that my views are really the views coming from the academics. On my left, as also on my right, I'm really accosted by the industry people. And so you can very well imagine the kind of plight of an academic who whose job is really to develop managers like Anjali, Kamlesh, Rajiv, and everybody around who's over here. I look at the university, and I can talk about it today when we look at the higher education from that perspective. I think one of the biggest kind of a challenge that we all have today in our organizations is of redefining the value proposition of education. What is the value proposition? Why are we educating the young boys and girls who are coming to us? And that's a question that really bogs almost all university leaders and the university academia itself. Until now, we have talked about it as an issues relating to their employability, that because the young boys and girls want employability, so therefore we are there for that very reason. We've also talked about it from the perspective of developing minds and inquisitive minds. And therefore, from that kind of a perspective, a whole lot of work that has happened at the universities and at the business schools. But today, when I look at the value proposition, I think it's a combination of many, many things that the universities or business schools would have to be doing, and they are doing today. One is certainly the employability. The challenge of employability today has become far more acute, largely because of the Industry 4.0. And therefore, from that kind of a perspective, education in India, which has so far remained in what we call it as education 2.0, which is a mass education, a producer-oriented. I have produced this, and so therefore I expect everybody to be taking it. But the fact is that the new millennia, the students who are coming over to us are not willing to accept that. And even if they are willing to accept, when they graduate, people like Anjali or Kamlesh, they find them as lacking behind. So in terms of the skilling today, that has become a very major challenge. That's one part which is coming in. But the question that we look at it from an HR point of view is that if you don't have the faculty, which is themselves, which have the competencies to develop these kinds of skills, then in that case, nothing can really happen. And so therefore for us, today in education, the faculty development has become an extremely critical challenge. And I'm saying that because today there are two big challenges in education that we face. One is the leadership challenge. We don't have adequate leaders. Whenever I go out and I'm looking for the deans or I'm looking at senior academics, invariably 9 out of 10 times I turn blank. Although the number of applications are fairly large, but it is not the kind of a material that we are really looking at. And the second is in terms of the faculty, the people who are going to be developing these young boys and girls. The faculty that we get, again, from another point of view, they're young, they're highly aspirational, but when you really look at it from the point of view of their loyalty, which was at one stage considered to be the kind of a reason for many of us to have stayed in the world of academics, that somehow or the other just doesn't exist. So the challenge for the leaders today is not just merely from the point of view of how do you build the faculty competencies, but also in terms of how do you retain a talent. So talent retention is as much a challenge with us as it is with the industry. The second major challenge that we are having today is in the context of the technology. Many of us today still live in a world which is 20th century world. The comfort with technology is still pretty low. Whereas if we look at our entire environment, the students, the staff, the younger boys and girls, the younger colleagues, they're living in a world which is a 24/7 kind of a world. Interestingly, when I look at my kind of a role, almost about 10 years before, I had a good night's sleep every day. I wasn't disturbed. Today, almost every night before I retire, I look at my messages, and almost anybody who's writing to me is expecting a response. And early in the morning, I get a communication from my own, either from a student or a faculty or a staff, besides, of course, getting a whole lot of a world communicating from that. So in terms of developing this kind of a mindset today has also become an extremely big challenge, particularly for many of us who have come from a very different era itself. But having said that, let me put it across very quickly, that in terms of, from where I started off with, in terms of the value augmentation, in terms of redefining the value proposition, I think it is in terms of the employability, it is in terms of developing social sensitivity of these young graduates who are coming out from some of the premier institutions in the country, from where many of you are the recruiters itself. How do we do that? That's a challenge. How do we make them much more sensitive, not just merely to the society, but also make them understand that what is morally right, and that is what you should be doing. That's going to be a very big challenge. I'll stop over here, but I'll take it on as I really move forward.
Thank you, Professor Saxena. I think he's touched upon something which is so profound. We can't have social enterprises and people working there if it is not developed at the time of the education. So the universities have a big role to play in the rise of the social enterprise. And it is that value system, first in the leaders, then in the faculty, and then from there cascaded down to the students. So very well pointed, sir. I think there is no way this platform can stand with strength unless these steps are taken at a university level. Thank you for bringing that out. Now we're moving across to Rajiv. And before we do that, I think the whole debate about HR being a business partner falls flat when we talk about Rajiv. Here is a CEO as well as an HR director. Let's listen to Rajiv on his views on this important aspect of social enterprise. Rajiv.
Okay, thank you. I want to pick up on something that you mentioned in your introductory remarks, which is that people look for purpose and meaning. And since you've asked me to talk about the organization that I come from, at the risk of sounding almost unreal, for us, the mother font for business strategy and human capital initiatives is our core purpose, which basically says we want to drive positive change in the lives of our stakeholders and communities to enable them to rise. And of course, we'll do that through the businesses that we choose to be in and the way in which we do our businesses. Now, if you look at the new normal, in addition to being VUCA, driven by technology, globalization, demographics, and climate change, there is also a huge pushback by all stakeholders. I don't think customers, employees, members of the supply chain, the communities in which we operate, and of course shareholders and governments, they are not any more willing to take lying down what we dish out to them. This implies that for a business to be successful, not only do we need to have strategy, structure, processes, and metrics, which of course we need, we also need to be showing extreme care for our stakeholders. This immediately brings us to the convergence between the needs of society and business opportunities. Where do we get business opportunities? They come from the unmet needs of underserved customers in under-penetrated markets. And where are unmet needs and where are underserved customers and under-penetrated markets? That's in the society in which we live. So to do good business, to find areas where you have the potential to create value, you have to, by necessity, become aware of what is happening in the society. So far from being a choice that we need to be social or conscious in the capitalism that we employ, it is now a hardcore business necessity. So that's the point I would like to emphasize, that by the very nature of business and the world around us, every business enterprise will be forced to become a social enterprise or a conscious capitalist. Otherwise, they are not going to be able to do good business. So it's not about charity, it's hardcore business necessity. Let me pick up on the second point of experience versus a career. We believe that what actually ultimately differentiates the outperforming organization from other organizations is the passion that people bring to work. Of course, I'm not saying you don't need strategy, structure, processes, and metrics, but all companies will have them. It is the level of passion that employees bring to work that will finally differentiate what results you produce given strategy, structure, processes, and metrics. This passion is derived from the meaning and purpose that people see in work and by the empowerment that they experience. So actually it is experience which is going to create passion. It is passion that is going to create the differentiation of businesses. And therefore, purely from a business point of view, experience has to be the one thing that we emphasize on, and that because that's what we experience, that's what we, sorry, now I'm playing a bit on words. What do we, the life that we lead or live is nothing but experiences, right? So you cannot get away from experiences. And now, given the nature of the workforce, whether it be blue collar, white collar, experiences and meaning and empowerment is what people will be looking for. And therefore, experiences are not an alternative to career, they have to coexist with career. I believe everybody will still look for careers, but careers will be defined differently. You talked about the gig economy. Now, I don't know how long the gig economy will take to come to India, but I don't see experiences and careers as two separate things. They are, experience is what life is, and careers is the path that we take in life, and that path is not going to be linear anymore. It's going to be a zigzag, it's going to be interconnected, and people will look for different things. So that's my two-bit on the two questions that you used. Sorry for waving my hands around. I tend to get a little passionate about things.
Thank you, Rajiv. I think that is brilliant, both the aspects that you mentioned. So Rajiv has actually busted a few myths here. The first one is that there's nothing called social enterprise. All business enterprises will have to be social enterprises. And second is, there is no movement from careers to experiences. Careers will have to be wonderful, meaningful experiences. Otherwise, there'll be no careers. Thank you very much, Rajiv, for bringing that up. And also the way you talked about how organizations at the level of the purpose and the mission needs to define, their social purpose, the conscious capitalist. And I think it is from that fountainhead that the whole ethos of organizations will emerge. Moving on to another academic, and I'm talking about somebody who's been to a Jesuit society. He was a professor at XLRI. A wonderful example, 60 years back, of a social enterprise. We want to run a business school. We want to run at fee, profitable, with funds to allocate, but it will be with the purpose of the society. That was Jesuit Society's objective goal. So over to Professor Keith D'Souza.
Thank you. Okay, I guess I'm going to be giving slightly an academic perspective in addition to a little bit of practical. About 30 years ago, or 25 to 30 years ago, I was addressing a national HRD network meeting in Bangalore. And in the course of that meeting, I happened to give Infosys as an example of a wonderful organization that was contributing a lot to society and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, somebody from the audience raised his hand, and he was actually seething with rage. And he told me that, do you realize what Infosys is doing to our city? This was a very calm, lovely city, the kind of garden city which people wanted to retire to. And do you see what is happening because of the way in which they are building it up, the very high salaries they are giving, the perks, free cars, and so on. Do you realize what is happening, what it is doing to our city? I didn't have any answer to do that. I was a little nonplussed, and so I just sort of kept quiet about it. This was almost 30 years ago. Today, when you go to Bangalore, okay, you begin to see what is the impact. Of course, I don't say Infosys is the only company to blame. There are a whole lot of others. It's not who is to blame, but a garden city has been transformed into actually a hell on earth now. Now, when I look at it that way, cut to another city where I've spent 13 years of my life in Jamshedpur, where Rajiv was also there. It's such a beautiful place. It's, again, an ideal city. And the reason is because the Tata Steel, which controlled much of Jamshedpur, cared for the city. It looked at what would be the impact of its business on the city, and it cared for the city. Now, it's not possible, of course, that Infosys would do the same thing in Bangalore, because there are differences in terms of the kind of governance that takes place and their role in this. So there is a certain problem. I'm not blaming Infosys or the other companies for what is happening in that. But just suppose the managements of these companies had looked forward, had they had the foresight to see what would be the impact of their policies on the environment. Maybe they would have taken some preventive action. Maybe they would have taken some preemptive steps. What seemed at one time to be very visionary approaches to management can turn out to be, at a later stage, not very counterproductive. Tatas had the vision to look to the future, to have a very caring attitude, to look at whatever they did, what is the impact on society. In many other, in other cities, the companies go ahead, their main idea is profit, growth, etc., without looking at the long-term consequences. And then it becomes too late to undo the damage. Now, this is where we are talking about businesses. The concept of business as a social enterprise we are talking about today is actually very old. Because in the 1960s, you had authors like Katz and others who talked about organizations as social systems. And they said essentially that you cannot look at an organization without looking at its linkages with society. There's a very famous model of Emery and Trist when they looked at organizations and their social environments. And at that point of time, they looked at how do organizations impact the environment, and how does the environment impact. They said that organizations essentially have a symbiotic relationship with the social system in which they work. We still continue to have that, except that today realities have changed. The reality is, I wonder whether any of you saw the videos of the Indonesian earthquake the other day, I think yesterday or day before. Somebody sent me that video on WhatsApp. It's scary. The very ground is uneven. It shakes and so on. So the buildings are shaking, they don't have a place to walk. When you look at that, it reminds you of what organizations face today. What Emery and Trist called the turbulent field environment. They said that situation today is a situation where the environment itself has become so turbulent that it's very difficult to remain stable. Okay? Now that is the environment in which organizations are functioning today, business organizations and all other organizations. The whole environment has become a turbulent field. And to be able to stay stable, to be able to maintain a certain amount of stability in that requires tremendous amount of effort and ingenuity and capabilities. So in today's environment, what do organizations need to do to maintain stability in this society, to maintain that kind of this thing? One of the things that is there is, of course, in terms of how do you orient people towards this new context. A number of organizations, today we are talking about social responsibility, etc. Although there are companies that had for long established themselves as models of social responsibility. I already mentioned the Tata Group and the way in which they have managed this whole relationship in Jamshedpur. But there have been other organizations. Many of the public sector companies in India have been doing remarkable, although they are often not given enough credit. If you look at the Steel Authority of India, the way in which they have taken care of Bhilai. You look at other places where public sector companies have managed to maintain the environment. There is, maybe it is forced by government, but there is a certain concern or caring for the environment. They realize that they can grow only as long as the environment is preserved. Now, what is it that we need to do in the corporate sector to ensure that we continue to preserve the environment, preserve the social surroundings? I guess every company now is looking at things in terms of corporate social responsibility, etc. We at SPJMR have been looking at this. Our focus on our MBA program and our management programs is trying to infuse some kind of values among I guess everybody does that to some extent or the other. But there is, I think, a particular passion that we at SPJMR have. Students have to go through programs that expose them to the realities of the Indian environment. So they all have a compulsory 2 or 3 week orientation where they go to work with some NGOs or work in the social sector and so on. Apart from that, in our education curricula, we have now started a program where we are looking at the needs of, in this case, the needs of women. Okay? We are talking a lot about women empowerment today. Our own program, management program for women, is doing a lot in this area. Okay? So organizations need to care, they need to keep a concern for that, they need to address the social issues, they need to orient their programs so that they can make people more concerned about what is the impact of their activities on the social environment. So I think I've commented enough. Move on to you.
Thank you, Professor D'Souza. In fact, professors brought about 2 important aspects here. One is, if you look at the whole Bangalore example, the city getting messed up with a completely noble initiative, all great, but then we have some completely unintended results that you begin to see. Now that makes me wonder. And what makes me wonder is a social enterprise could be social in different ways. Its business is social, one social enterprise. Another social enterprise where it is social to its employees, it's compassionate to its employees. A third enterprise, which is neither first nor the second, but it does its business cut and dry, but it makes sure that the taxes are paid with honesty to the government so that they can be used for a social cause. Now, who are we to say which one of these is more social enterprise than the other? So therefore, the point we come to is that this is, in a way, a little more complicated than what we might possibly have established so far. It was a little beyond than that. Here is an example of an organization which is doing everything okay, creating jobs, employment, but in the process, completely unintended, it messes up the city. So an organization could be a social enterprise in possibly infinite ways, not just the core business, but they could be social in terms of the way they deal with their partners. They could be social with the way they could deal with the immediate community. And so I think, and I think one more difference that Professor D'Souza brought out was the difference between an enterprise being a social enterprise versus any enterprise trying to do corporate social responsibility. Here, when we talk about a social enterprise, its core business is that social enterprising, rather than it being, okay, I do this, I sell cigarettes, but by the way, I also plant 5 trees a year. That's more an example of photo ops versus it itself being a social enterprise. So going over to another wonderful opportunity here, and what makes me very interesting to listen to Jayant is that he worked for NTPC and then he worked for Tata Power. He works for Tata Power now. Now, if you look at the definition of the entire public sector enterprises, by definition, they were all social enterprises. They were created to serve the needs of the society. They created employment so that people could get jobs. Profit is not a motive, etc., etc. How they behave and how they've done and what a load they are on the national exchequer, those are questions of a different order altogether. But in principle, the public sector enterprises were set up as a social enterprise. And then he went on to work for another organization that he works for today now, which is a group of Tatas, which by definition they can guide the world on what a social enterprise is. So over to you, Jen. Very, very interesting to know from you what your views are.
Okay, thank you. So I think if we trace the history of corporate organizations, it's roughly 200 years. First incorporated organization was established in USA in the year 1810. Different form of organization, corporate organizations were existing, but In the proper form, incorporated organization is around 200 years in the entire history of mankind of several thousand years. But you look at the impact that these corporate organizations have been able to garner in only 200 years of existence. It's not only creation of wealth, because of which they control they garner so much of influence or impact in the society. There is another reason why corporate organizations are taken so seriously by society, which is controlling the resources. Look at the amount of all kinds of societal resources which are controlled by the corporates. And that is the reason, while we are having this kind of the world order today, when it's very, very fragile, actually. What is the future? We do not know, whether it is geopolitical or other environmental issues or other serious issues. That is the reason, in this survey which was carried to so many CEOs and CXO level people, there is an overwhelming cry from leadership of corporate organization that we need to steer our course towards socially responsible or social enterprise. And that is what is rise of social enterprise to my mind. The time of social enterprise has come at global level, merely because by only keeping profit as the motive and not marrying it with the purpose for which they exist, I don't think with the might that corporate organizations hold today in every country across the globe, it will be possible to continue the existing world order for long. And corporate organizations also understand it very well. That is why, if this has to continue, if the corporate organizations have to exist, then there has to be a change of course. Out of 200 years, Tata Group has existed for 150 years. This year, in fact, we complete 150 years. And our founder, one of the very beautiful quote that comes from our founder is that it is not about contributing by way of donation and philanthropy and those kind of things. Society is the region for which we exist. I think that's very, very profound vision that was given, which the group has lived. And we have a long history in which we have seen, it's not that we have not seen ups and downs. We have all seen our own share of ups and downs. But if the organization stays course with this as the purpose, that a region for existence, then end of the day, this whole longevity or contributing to society for which we exist, that is far more meaningful. And that is where I say that this is very, very timely. If you look at all the large events around the world happening, the way we are going, whether it is environment or various other developments which are happening, which are very, very essential for growth of the mankind, humanity, then it is important that corporate organizations, with all their force that they muster, they change their orientation from only creation of wealth to marrying profit with a social purpose. Which means, so far, whatever we were doing in terms of only having financial capital and other forms of capital, assets, etc., now garnering social capital also as an important metric becomes very important. So that is first thing that I feel. I think this survey points out very, very timely and very important, powerful trends. The 10 trends that you are showing, it only shows a subconscious level agreement or alignment of mind of the world leaders in business, in corporate, that we need to come back and fill the vacuum that is existing in the society in terms of our contribution. Coming back to this career and experiences, where other panel members also made some sort of an insightful remark, my take is very simple in that there are two very important forces which are acting today, which are basically changing the fundamental way work is done in the corporate organizations. One is the impact of technology, various technologies. We are underplaying it because it has not come with the full force, but we can see the early signs and the galloping speed with which it is gaining momentum now. I'm sure it's very soon that we'll see the full impact, and it's important that on various tracks we start preparing for it. Otherwise, the engagement of individual with the organization, which is by way of work, that is the mechanism, and whole employment contract, this wedlock model of lifetime employment, all those instruments which have been built over a long period of time, a lot of disruptions are waiting for us. So that is the first force that is there. Second is, the new generation which is coming at the workplace is having absolutely different kind of a aspiration, different kind of orientation, different kind of preferences and choices, which organizations are taking note of. And organizations need to be prepared to deal with those kind of special preferences and choices. It's not that it is happening only in this generation. In every generation it has been happening. Every generation, someone will be new generation and there will be elders at the workplace. What is different this time is the contrast between existing and what is coming. That contrast is extremely, very, very profound. And that is where we need to alter and recognize those trends, prepare the organization of how do we deal with these kind of things, not as a calamity that is coming to the organization, but as an opportunity of how do we make it really. And that is where the careers from careers to experiences, this topic I find very fascinating, that experience has always been an important thing in employment. After qualification, the most important thing is the experience, but this is about the individualized experience. That means what kind of experience that I want to gain so that I grow the way I want to grow. Not in a very cut and dry, one size fits all, stair-step kind of a hierarchical career growth is no more acceptable to people. They want to explore. They want to define their own career journey. In that, organizations will have to create those enabling systems in which individual decides. So the key message to me is power to individual. Organizations have to create those systems in which individual has all the power of deciding his or her own life and future and career. And what kind of experiences need to be created so that individual progresses by way of learning and growth. They are the two trends. As far as technology is concerned, only a few data points that I want to share, just in case if we feel that still there is a long haul ahead and we have all that time, the sense of urgency which is required at organization level for preparation. Because redundancies will come. It's not that new emerging technologies will take away the job. Net additions will be there. That is what all the people who are dealing with this whole issue, including Prime Minister a few days back when he was inaugurating that Center for Fourth Generation Technology. And it's a World Economic Forum. It is being established in Maharashtra itself. He also said so. I think the change is strategic shift that is happening, structural shift that is happening in the nature of job, the kind of things. So redundancies will be there, obsolescence will be there. How do we deal with those obsolescences so that individuals get minimum impacted? And we'll have to create a participative model where individual also doesn't just say that it is the responsibility of the organization, and organization doesn't say that it's an individual who has to do it. It has to be a participative model where individual does what he or she has to do. Organization creates those systems through which those renewal, self-renewal and multiple careers in the same lifetime, all those things happen. I think these are the two things which will force people to look at career and experiences very differently. Thank you.
Thank you, Jayant. I am certain that only a Tata's man could have said that we could have a situation wherein there is loss of jobs without loss of employment. Thank you very much, Jayant. We have a few questions. I wanted to group them. And the first question I want to ask to the three HR heads on this panel. This is to Anjali, Rajiv, and again to you, Jayant. And the question is very simple. And it's a very insightful question. Thank you for raising it. The question is, you know, around the world, the HR function is notorious for the way they treat everybody other than the leaders of the organization. Reality. The way they deal with them, the way they respond, the lack of compassion, the lack of sensitivity, and so on and so forth. What would you do, or what have you done, respective HR heads in your organizations, to make sure that at least this aspect is addressed? How will you make sure, or how are you making sure, or how have you made sure in your organizations that your HR folks, the frontline HR executives who deal with a larger part of the organizations, they are compassionate, and they're caring, and they're sensitive in the way they deal with the rest of the organization? So I'll start with you, Anjali, over to Rajiv, and again, Jayant.
You want to acknowledge the person who has asked the question?
I will do that towards the end.
So since I don't know who asked the question, great question. Thank you very much for asking it. So what have we done? It's a very large question, but I'll just start somewhere and make it arrive. So one of the things that has really changed dramatically is that in the past, there was an era where there was everything for everybody. So almost like this is the rule book, this is the law, entitlement given here. What's really changed now is that there is something for everyone, which means that there needs to be this shift towards making it more meaningful. And it comes from this whole new generation where it has to be what's in it for me, and it's not in a selfish way, but in a more meaningful way. The second thing is technology actually making it happen. And the third is this huge demographic shift where a new style of leadership therefore is required. So what have we done? I think the first thing is from the HR team's perspective, because the question was more of what has HR done to enable this to happen for people. The first thing that we did is, as a community, we agreed that our vision would be think business, think people. It cuts both ways, because if you're thinking business, you are thinking about people. And if you're thinking about people, it could be from any dimension. It could be from people in the business or in HR, because at the end of the day, in my mind map, HR is really all people managers. So if you're sitting inside the business, line managers, and thinking business, you are thinking people. But what is really important is that the experiences are tailored. And therefore, what we've done is we are moving away very, very consciously from focusing on employee engagement, which is really time-bound, to employee experiences, which really touches the core of an individual and is meaningful to each individual and is tailored. So for example, if I was to come back to careers and experiences, in this particular question, so what has HR done? We actually have every employee able to chart his own career path. And what have we done? We've piggybacked on technology. So what are we doing? It's like, in your mobile, you're in a traffic, you look at your mobile, the GPS system, and it tells you, guess what? You have three ways to approach your final destination. Choose which one you want. So in an experience, everybody wants to have the power to make the choice. So we actually have a tool to say, my dream position is to be head of a particular business. Guess what? You have 3 routes to get there. And it is fine-tuned to the individual, right down to the individual's potential, not just at a competence level. So from an HR perspective, we've actually fine-tuned it to that extent. We no longer focus only on job rotation, because that means the power still doesn't lie with the individual. It probably lies somewhere in the organ. We do it because it's important, but what I'm saying, we don't limit to that, because then you need to go to your manager needs to decide, you go through this whole job rotation, you should be high on the radar. We're actually created the policy, now in the process of implementation. We're looking at job swaps. So you and I are in different roles. I want to have the experience of what it means to be in your position. And I can contact you and say, would you do a job swap with me? And what does that do? It puts the power back to the individual. It's you who makes a choice. You, of course, have an understanding with your manager, but then you go out and reach, and you are empowered to make that decision. So that's, again, about actually putting choice in the individual's hands. But while doing all of this, and I could go on. I mean, we talk a lot about the new generation and what they're bringing and technology and all of that. But guess what? It comes with a dichotomy. And that is the fact that in none of the other industrial revolutions was experience such a big topic. Because in all the other industrial revolutions, the experience mattered a lot. But in this industrial revolution, the 4.0, somebody coming out of the institute with a new technology is far more experienced, if you may, than a factory manager, say, just to give a manufacturing example, who has been running the processes for so long because he doesn't know the technology. But guess what? The technology guy comes with a higher edge, if you may, straight out of college. But the factory manager understands processes, and the both of them have to go in tandem. So we tend to focus a lot on, what is, this new generation bringing, which I think is very, very valuable. But we shouldn't lose sight of the fact, and we talk much lesser, unfortunately, about what's the kind of experience walking out of the organization. And in order to do that, coming back to creating a choice and an individual, something for everyone, we are also talking equally about what should we be doing with the retiring population? How do they contribute back and become mentors and coaches and sponsors for building the competence of the others? But in all of this, I think all this can succeed really well only if we have the right kind of environment, the right kind of leadership. Right now, with a huge demographic shift, there's a void that's being created, so we are really trying to accelerate the growth of talent and leadership. And shifting, if I may take it back to the social enterprise debate we are here on today, to being task-focused, yes, but coming along with that is social collaborative style of working. Because in the absence of that, we're really beginning to see a gap. Everybody talks about STEM, right? Science, mathematics. But now it's all moving to STEAM, where the A is really arts. So you will have lots of robots and cobots and sensors doing the science part, which most engineers are coming out with. So they are designing it. But now leadership, everything has an art to it. And so the arts is coming very seriously into leadership. So I think all of those are things where we are really focusing on, and I give you some examples of what we're doing practically on the ground.
Thank you, Anjali. Just that 2 words, job swap, is worth its weight in gold. Thank you very much, Anjali. Over to you, Rajiv.
Thank you. The question was, what is HR doing to behave like human beings, right? That's the question. Okay, so the answer will come in 2 parts. One is behavior, and the other is systems and institutionalization of that behavior. So the only way to really make a difference is how I behave, right? So you have to show by example whether you're a good human being or not. So I can only say that I try very hard to be, above all, a decent human being who listens, who shows respect, who speaks the truth, has compassion, and has a sense of service. Now, it's not only me. I can tell you that when I joined Mahindra, I met Mr. Keshav Mahindra, and he told me, Rajiv, welcome. We are very happy to have you here. You worked a long time in the Tatas. You've been a business person. I will know that you have been a good HR person when after 1 year, you don't show me graphs and charts and metrics. That doesn't impress me too much. But if people tell me, starting from the lowest paid worker to the senior most director, that Rajiv is a person I can go and talk to without fear, without being worried that he'll play games with what I tell him, and where I feel at ease and respected and treated like a decent human being. If everybody is able to say that, then I will know you've been a good HR head. So that has stuck in my mind. And so, to repeat, it is the way HR folks behave, and it has to be done by example, and it has to start with me, Rajiv Dubey, with me, anyone who's an HR guy. Are we behaving above all like decent human beings, showing respect, showing concern, and showing trust? So that's the first part. Now, intention is not good enough. One person's behavior is not good enough. So have we put into place in Mahindra systems, processes, and metrics, and a culture that emphasizes the prime importance of being above all a good human being, of respecting people, of trusting people, of speaking the truth, and of being compassionate. So that is actually inbuilt into what we call the 3+5 framework. I won't go into details, except to say that at the core of the 3+5 framework is being a good human being. And it is what we judge people on. It is primary to our performance management system, and more importantly to the talent management, succession planning, and reward and recognition. So I don't want to talk too much because there's not much time. So to summarize, it is in my individual behavior, and it is in the systems and processes where being a good human being is put at the same level as the technical skills and competence that you bring to the table, sometimes even higher. Thank you.
Brilliant, Rajiv. Being a good human being and making sure that that is what is observed. Over to you, Jain.
Okay, so I'll pick up the other part of the question that other than leadership, people, HR people do not treat properly the other employees. So leadership is the only segment which is treated well. Have I got the question right? Okay. So I think if there is a problem with the belief, leadership belief in the organization, then there is a different remedy which cannot be answered in these kind of sessions, and major surgery is required. I'll be very open what I think. But if it is not, if there is no belief problem at the leadership level, then it's an implementation execution problem. 2-3 things which are very, very important. First is transparency. If you start driving transparency as a theme in the organization, then more accountability will start flowing in over a period of time. It won't happen in short term, but over a period of time, more transparency brings more accountability of the people. And I think, as far as I am concerned, as a professional or the values of the organization, there cannot be a compromise on dignity. I think the question relates to the dignity of individual. Many times employees come with several requests. We will be in a position to do that job. Many times we may not be in a position to do that job. The people need a basic answer. At least in 2018, when we are talking about corporate organizations, then people need a basic answer, at least a dignified answer of why it cannot be done. If we do not tell that truth and mix truth with half truth and half lies and so on and so forth, then it is a loss of credibility. And that is my very plain vanilla answer to the question. It's a good question because it reflects reality of life. But then thematically, I believe we should drive transparency, which will drive accountability in the organization. Over a period of time, that will become the cultural norm of the place. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that was our first question. And I think before we go to the next question, a very interesting one, and this time we are going to go to the 2 academicians on the panel. I want to read out a few comments. These are not questions, but these are very interesting, so I'll just quickly read those through. The first one is saying that, is there a way in which corporate organizations could contribute talent to the government? And it's a question, is it being done? Is there a way we can provide these professionals so that government can use them for social enterprises, social efforts, etc., etc.? I only think of one example, and this is a very specific example. TCS decided that for a period of 5 years, they will contribute the CEO to the NSDC, National Skill Development Corporation. And we know about Jayant Krishnan, who was in that role, and Mr. Ramadurai decided that and contributed. So we have examples of, similarly, we can look at Mr. Nandan Nilekani, and Ramanan again is from, on the Atal mission, he's from, absolutely, he's the mission director for the Atal Innovation Labs under Niti Aayog. So I think such examples exist. But I think these are too far and too few. Is there a model in which more of this could happen, and could this become a way of the corporate organizations playing out their social enterprise role? Very, very interesting observation. Thank you for bringing that up. The other question we have is related to somebody's observation saying that this is not an HR job. This is not what can be done. Social enterprises, that sensitivity can't be created by HR. This is more of a grassroots education societal value. And I appreciate when you say, make that observation. Again, a very valid observation. The third one is another valid observation which says that we can't have social enterprise nature or character of the organization if there is no significant participation from women. We can't have a social enterprise which only has got 30% women or less. So I think once again a very, very interesting observation. Very true. There is no way you can have half the world represented by only 1/3 of the world onto that enterprise. So not going to work. Thank you very much for those 3 observations. Now going to the question. So here is a question to the 2 academicians. The question is, beyond the courses, beyond the sensitivity that we can bring into social enterprise amongst our students and faculty and the team and the leadership, what else could education do towards getting this thought process right from the beginning amongst the students? To both of you, Rajan and Keith.
Keith, let me just take that. I think there are three more aspects that we need to be doing back in the education. And that really emerges from the society's expectation from us. Society is a very important stakeholder in education. One is in terms of the transparency. And transparency in not just merely the board level governance, but also in the governance of almost every function that we have today. Now, if as an education institution, we are able to be, if we are transparent, and that's what the society expects of us, believe me, the value of transparency that we want to teach to the graduating students is really something much more easier. Because there is so much there in the system itself. And we have looked at it back at NMIMS, we've looked at it whether this has been the board, or it's been our various statutory bodies, or it's been our admission processes, examination, whatever it is, the very transparency itself, that anybody wanting to know what it is, please look at it. And they can look at it. So transparency. Second is in terms of the equal opportunity employer. As an equal opportunity institution, it's very particular in the context of higher education, where there's a lot of discrimination that comes up on account of multiple reasons. It could be either the gender, it could be in terms of your social status, it could be in terms of your economic kind of a background, whatever that is there. If the institution, if the university is able to not just merely talk about being an equal opportunity institution, but is also able to put it in practice, then in that case, it becomes much more easier. As an example, it's much easier for me to say, we're going to have a 30% reservation for the women in our admissions. But that's not just merely adequate for that. But the question is that when you have the women student, and some of them may not necessarily be coming over from the kind of elite background from where some of the other kind of groups of students may be coming in, what is it that this institution is doing to even develop them at par with the other group itself? And not just merely, and this is where something that we have really looked at it very, very closely. So equal opportunity institution is much more important. Women's sensitivity, we talk about it. Today we are talking about all the kind of things that are going on in terms of the Me Too kind of a campaign which is there. I think the only way that you are able to do that or counter that is to really start at the university level, in education institutions, where you make the boys and the girls understand that both the gender are important for the purposes of delivering value itself. And that, I think, is important. And I must put it across over here that technology today is a very big kind of a leveler that we are all realizing in higher education. So I look at it essentially from 2 points of view. One is in terms of the transparency, and the other is in terms of the non-discrimination kind of an approach that I really see that, equal opportunity.
I think what I'm going to say is probably more of a reiteration of what Dr. Saxena has said. There are two things that I think have a very powerful impact on people. One is the role of leadership, because there is a tendency in any organization, in any unequal power system, is that the people at the junior level or the subordinate level tend to role model the leaders. Okay. So how do the leaders behave? What are the values they talk about? What do they practice is something that's very important. And I think that's equally true in an educational institution. What kind of values, what kind of behavior do people at the top practice? Because that is something that is role modeled in the rest of the organization. The second aspect is, I think, the culture. Over a period of time, the kind of culture that develops in the organization is something that shapes the minds and behaviors of people. So in an educational institution, also we need to shape the culture. And so the challenge of leadership, the challenges in an educational organization are very similar to the challenges in any other. The leader needs to shape the values and create a culture which can sustain the behavior patterns of people over a period of time.
Thank you very much. So we have another very interesting question, and now this question is to all the 5 panelists, the 4 doctors and the 2 normal people, the 2 healthy people. And the question is really related to if your employees or if your students, or if a group of students or faculty in the case of the academic institutions, a group of customers in case of the corporate organizations, group of suppliers, anybody, any of your stakeholders were to come to you with a social enterprise proposition, how will you support it? And it's just not grants. It's not like funding they're talking about. It's a business enterprise, so it's a business plan, and there'll be support required in a very business sense. How will you support it? Employees were to come in, students were to come in, any of the stakeholders were to come in. So this time around, I'm going to reverse the order and start with you, Jayant. And we realize that we are coming towards the end of the session, so we'll keep it brief. Thank you, Jayant.
Yeah, very brief. I think the way I understand social enterprise, it's nothing to do with a dole or a philanthropy. That's a different arena altogether. Here, the business model itself should be that it should contribute to the cause of society and also generate profit, so that the more scaling up will give more purpose and meaning to the cause for which it has been established. That is what is a social enterprise. So if there is an idea which is there in today's world, I think capital is not a constraint anymore. If the idea has the power, then there are enough number of people who are ready to back it. So as an organization, if an employee comes or a vendor comes or any other stakeholder comes, if the idea has a business sense and a social sense, then organizations will take lead. And if organizations do not take lead, then many such outfits are there in the form of various angel fund, venture capital, all those people who will back it up. I think this is a change of mindset. So far we were driven by a particular set of purpose for which we exist. And that has been coded by professors like Professor Keith and Professor Rajan Saxena and all his creed, which is in different schools of engineering management and other higher education, that we exist for that. I think it's very, very refreshing that at such large level, global level, now we are talking that marrying profit with purpose. And that purpose has to be a social purpose that has to be inbuilt into the business model of the thing.
I don't have much to add to this. I think it's the same thing. But the idea of the social purpose and the business has always been there. Okay, it's not that it's. But in today's situation, as I said, we are living in a turbulent field kind of environment. It has now become urgent. It's now become not just a matter of platitude. It's become a matter of even the very existence of business itself. So it is the urgency that has increased, and therefore the pressure on management to think about it and do something about it.
Yeah, so I would say that I would first be open to the possibilities that exist. Listen to what is being said, listen to the proposal without being a prisoner of my own past. So this is mindfulness. Be aware of the possibilities and then, of course, put it through the ringer that any business proposal would be put through. Is it worth trying out? Does it fit in with our overall purpose? Does it make business sense? And then give an opportunity to experiment or do trials on a small scale. Learn very quickly if you fail, and then move on again. But I would say that most ideas fail because the people who should be listening to them are not really listening, are not really open to the possibilities, because we have all the filters from our own past, either success or failure, coloring it, and we kill an idea even before it is born.
I'll take straight from the education. And I'll take something that I have learned in the last 2 decades of my leadership at NMIMS. I'll start from where I'll go back again to the core purpose. The core purpose is education for us. Sometime in 2006, I mean, even before I really came back to NMIMS, after my stint at IIM, I was we had started a campus in rural district, rural town area in North Maharashtra. And at that time, it was just getting ready. But the question before us was, what is it that we are going to be doing? And we went over there. We started talking to people over there. What is it that we should be doing? Should we be offering the engineering courses, or what is it that we should be doing? And interestingly, one kind of a part that came to us was from some of those young boys and girls from the tribal areas who were just high schools, and they said that, look, we want education. We want something which can help us to get employed. Many of us started looking at it from the prism of degree programs, and we sat through together. But we said that why not we look at it from the perspective of developing a vocational program. And we developed a 3-year degree program in textiles. And there was a textile plant or the textile park right there itself. And with the cotton growing area, we developed a 3-year kind of a textile program. And the students who came to us, these were the first generation learners, and coming from families where the income level was no more than 10,000 rupees per annum. They hadn't seen anything better than that. They came to us, we trained them, we educated them, we gave them that kind of an experience of working in textiles, actually working on the plant itself, right there in those mills. And after the 3 years, when these students walked out, they were confident, they were speaking English. Not only that they were speaking in English and in their own mother tongue, but they knew almost every function of a textile firm. They were some of the most useful employees. And who picked them up? Some of the best known companies like Welspun or Raymond or any of the textile firms, they just picked them up. So the way that I looked at it, NMIMS moved towards contributing to the society in a essentially through the education route, but essentially looking at it from the perspective of not just merely from the prism of a degree program, but looking at it from the prism of the whole purpose of education, what education can do, and should we offer that through a diploma route or through a degree route or through a certificate route. That's something that we do.
Thank you, Rajan.
So if your question was that if somebody comes to me, an employee comes or a partner comes and proposes something that's a social enterprise, what would the answer be? Just from the core of what a social enterprise stands for, which is everybody wins. That's what is a social enterprise, that there is no win-lose. Everybody is successful. That in itself embodies, your question has the answer in itself, to say that the short answer would be yes. And of course, it would mean that what I would typically think about is not just listening to the proposal, but also listening to how we want to achieve it. Because while we have talked during the entire evening a lot about what is changing, we haven't talked about the one thing that remains constant, which is that every business is done with the right set of values within this set of code of conduct and compliance and how it is done. So while that remains the same as a solid foundation, I think the conversation would be more around, yes, let's do it, let's talk about how we're going to make it happen, rather than why it's not possible. Because I think that's a bit regressive, and so being more in the solution mode is something that I can imagine myself having a conversation and putting the individual down a path to make it happen. There are many examples. I know we're running out of time, but maybe if I pick one story, we've all been hearing about the high level of farmer suicides that have been happening in different parts of our country. What we forget is that it comes with a huge price to pay for a lot of members in the family. Somebody talked about women not participating in the workforce. We also forget that many of the families there are with young girls who obviously fall off in their education. This was an idea that came up in the company to say, what can we do to help this cause? And we are right now actually holding them. We catch them very early, around 8th, 10th standard. We are moving to 8th now. We've already done 10th. Taking them all the way through the next 5-7 years. Somebody wants to become a doctor, policeman, doesn't matter. We hold them all the way through. That is a social enterprise. And this is an example of an idea, and there are many such examples of an idea that has come up in the organization and reached fruition. So I think it's a no-brainer, a social enterprise, somebody coming up, answer is yes. Conversation is how do we make it happen, and not why it's not possible.
Thank you, Anjali. Actually, technically, this is the end of the session, but I wanted to, seek your permission. Can we go on for 7 more minutes? I wanted 1 more minute with each of the experts. Yes? Yes or no? Thank you very much. Thank you. Very quickly, so this will be our, last closing remarks from each of the panelists, 1 minute each. Bullet points, 2 or 3 things that we should do as individuals to make this journey happen. The journey to social enterprises, the journey to experiences. Before that, just wanted to thank all the people who asked questions and who put their names here. Some of them haven't. So we have Aditya Sareen who asked a question. We have Hemendra Verma who asked a question. We also have Nitin Kapoor. And there was another question from Rajesh Srivastav. And there was a question from Archana. So a round of applause for these, friends, and 3 other unnamed anonymous questions. So a round of applause for them as well. So now we go over to the panel. This is our last opportunity to get insight from them as to if this journey has to carry on. What are the 1, 2, 3 things which we should do? And this time, Anjali, we start with you and go to the end.
So 3 things. I think one is have the rate of change inside be faster than the rate of change outside. Agility, which means make it meaningful for everybody. Openness, and hold your values close to your heart, and in implementation.
I look at it from the perspective of one, listening. I think it's very important to listen to the stakeholders. And 2 is the agility. I think even in education, we have got to be agile. Some of those kinds of things, I think what you said, Anjali, was about the policies being framed and they being pushed down. I think that doesn't hold good. Much the same, and this is equally true for universities and education also. We just cannot have policies which would remain static for life itself. So that's the second part, which is in terms of the real-time kind of a responsiveness. So that's the second. And the third part of it is walk the talk. If you talk of transparency, if you talk of, let's say, equal opportunity, then just walk this talk.
Brilliant. Thank you.
The first one would be open to all possibilities. Listen with an open mind and don't be a prisoner of your own past. Second one is know how to manage fear and leverage failure. So encourage experimentation, but learn from failure. And the third one would be choose very carefully the problem that you want to solve. These are the 3 things I would say.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you.
I don't think I have much more to add than what Dr. Saxena and also Rajiv have just said. I think it's a matter of the famous words of Mahatma Gandhi, if you want to change the world, start with yourself.
Brilliant.
Okay, I think for me, being open to explore the new world, because it's full of possibilities, and if we become prisoners, I am exactly repeating what you said, being prisoners of our own beliefs of past, then probably we'll miss out on that. So being open to explore that possibility, the new world which is awaiting us, and participate into that. Second is, whenever we represent the face of the organization, then we need to be genuine. I think that is very, very important for me. And each one of us in our small role, big moment, small moment, important, less important, I think being genuine solves the problem, and it brings a lot of credibility, which is very essential element of life in the organization. with more and more this technology advent and all those things, I'm afraid that somewhere HR will change its own character from being very closer to people, being very personal. Are we becoming very tech savvy and very, very metric driven and very efficient? All those things are required. How do we retain that original character of where we started with?
Brilliant. So, friends, from me, 2 sentences here. If you have a social enterprise idea, if you do want to be that social entrepreneur or entrepreneur, whichever way you like to look at it, make it large. We have one life. You want to give it your best try. If you want to seek that experience within your career or outside that career, do seek that experience. I think if others don't support you, remember long back what Rabindranath Tagore said, you go alone. So in that journey, this is our wonderful panel. Signing off, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure interacting with you. Thank you very much, Jayant. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you very much, Rajan. Thank you, Anjali. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Over to you, Sonali.
Thanks to all the panelists for sharing your experiences and giving us such wonderful perspectives here to this evening. May I now request Mr. Dhananjay Singh, Director General, National HRD Network, to please propose the customary vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary. In fact, we have one participant, Mr. Sanjay, Vice President HR. Is he there? Okay. So he was so touched with whatever is happening here. He has penned down some lines. I suppose I got a message. So may I request you to speak something? You wanted to say something, Sanjay? Please come.
Can you just make it on this? I'll play this.
It's a music or video?
Yeah, it's a small audio.
So thank you for the initiative, Sanjay. I think by the time it's coming up, that's, I think, wonderful. Most people don't do it. Since you've done it, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
आज बात करें ऐसे इंसान की जिस पर नजर है खुद भगवान की, जीतने वाले हैं ऐसे राजा दिलों के, कभी घबराते नहीं जो मुश्किलों से। नाम है उनका श्रीमान राजीव दुबे, जिनके प्रेम में कितने लोग हैं डूबे, सभी के प्रेरणा। आज बात करें ऐसे इंसान की जिस पर नज़र है खुद भगवान की, जीतने वाले हैं ऐसे राजा दिलों के, कभी घबराते नहीं जो मुश्किलों से। नाम है उनका श्रीमान राजीव दुबे, जिनके प्रेम में कितने लोग हैं डूबे, सभी के प्रेरणा स्रोत वो महाज्ञानी, शिकन चेहरे पे ना कभी परेशानी। कितनी भाषाओं पर इनकी महारत, जानती दुनिया उन्हें और ये भारत। मन मोह ले यूं बुलंद आवाज, दिल में पुष्पित अध्यात्म का राज। करते सबकी इज्जत छोटे या बड़े, चूकते नहीं लेने से यूं फैसले कड़े। आदत बस अपने उसूल पे चलना, खुद संभलना औरों को संभालना। जो कहते उसे करके भी दिखाते, मुसीबतों में नेता बन आगे आते। इंसान न कोई राह दिखाने वाला, ना ही कोई जिंदगी चलाने वाला। रहता सदा इनका मुस्कुराता चेहरा, विचारों पर ना लगने दिया पहरा। बड़े विनम्र और गहन विचारक, दिमाग पे नहीं दिलों के शासक। गृहस्थ में रहते पर हैं जैसे योगी, इनकी जैसी ना कोई हस्ती होगी। ये दाढ़ी वाले संत जैसे है फरिश्ता, इनसे मेरा गुरु शिष्य का रिश्ता। मुझे दी यूं प्रेरणा आगे बढ़ने की, जिंदगी के हालातों से लड़ने की। मैं आपकी तरह बनना चाहता हूँ, मैं भी खुद को बदलना चाहता हूँ। होता एक ही राजीव जमाने में, एक सदी लगती है इन्हें बनाने में। कविता द्वारा आपका शिष्य संजय कवठालकर, कवि सुमित त्यागी के साथ। धन्यवाद।
In fact, Sanjay ji, I'm really touched how you came with such thoughts and you recorded it and you wanted to play. It's not easy, sir. So let's hear for Sanjay ji, please. And I'm sure all the panelists who are here, they must have touched life of many, many people, scores of people in India and abroad with their character and their contribution. This is just one of the thoughts which Sanjay ji has shared. So friends, as we come to end of this session, this is the 28th session in the row. The person behind this, Dr. Harivansh Chaturvedi, Director of BIMTech, and Professor K.K. Sinha in Nefsechia, he's in US right now. Let's thanks both of them. And their wonderful team led by Dr. Manusi Chaudhary, Akhil Pandeyji and others at BIMTech. This session itself, National HRD Network, on behalf of BIMTech, NHRD and Deloitte, these are our organizations which are formed to serve the society, whether it is a BIMTech, Deloitte or NHRD. In HRD itself, people, they work on voluntary basis. Many of them, you can see they're sitting here. Keith D'Souza ji, he is one of our founding members of National HRD Network, National Secretary of NHRDN. Rajiv ji is National Past President. Anjali, President, Pune Chapter. They all, beyond their challenges in their offices, in personal life, they give their time. Each one of you, you give your time on a voluntary basis to create a social enterprise, to create something which is very, very valuable for professionals, wherever we are, whichever function we work for. So, thank you so much for joining here for this session, each one of you on the stage, please. And if our retention challenge is even 20% in our organization, the fact is every 5 years we are going to have a new organization. And unless we have the capability to accept people as volunteers for whatever time they give to us, in the time when we call them in our association that they are employees of our organization, we cannot create social enterprise. And I cannot agree more, and I echo each one of whatever they have said in the panel discussion today. Our grateful thanks, I will start with the moderator, Dr. Kamlesh Vyas. We know him for many, many years from his previous organizations also. Kamlesh ji, the way you moderated the session, let's hear for our moderator, please. In fact, such a delicate balance which he created, the way in which he presented a very complex subject in a way where each one of us could be a part of it, and it is reflected in the kind of questions which were asked, very, very informed questions. And obviously the answers were one of the best which we received from the panelists and the kind of experience which all they have. So once again, thank you so much, Dr. Vyas, for moderating the session. Then Anjali, in fact, she is one, of course, her background is a psychologist. And the way she presents very candid point of view, those who know her, they know that she is the one of the professionals who will always bring forth issues, agenda and perspective which will be very, very unique, very, very relevant for any one of us, in fact. Thank you so much, Anjali, for coming, especially from Pune and joining us here. Dr. Rajan Saxena ji, all are of, sir, your students only. And the way you have built institutions, the way you have built thousands and thousands of leaders across the globe. So thank you so much for sparing your invaluable time with all of us. And Rajiv ji, sir, as Sanjay ji said, for many of us, you are someone who defines what a leader means. And your very, very humane nature, which really touch heart and soul of people who have the privilege of working with you. And sir, grateful thanks. We know how hard-pressing personal commitment you had, but for the larger cause, you chose to come to this forum and share your experience. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Keith D'Souza, sir, words will fail me to thank you, because I would like to share one personal experience. There is one small institution in Meerut, a place near Delhi. And Dr. D'Souza came from Bombay, reached Delhi airport, went to Meerut, delivered the session, came back to Delhi airport and came to Bombay. Not easy, sir. You have always inspired. Thank you so much for joining us here. Dr. Jayant Kumar, a young professional on a very senior position. Looks young. And you must have heard his point of view. And Dr. Kumar, I really respect the kind of candid ways in which you present a point of view. And it is not only for doing justice to the subject, but also presenting a picture which is very, very real. It may be very harsh at times, but you always choose a path which is the right rather than which is more popular. So thank you so much for sharing your views, sir. Now, all the participants here, the core, the soul of this organizing is for each one of you. We understand it's a Friday evening. It's not easy in Bombay to commute from different places and to assemble at a place here. You must have many, many opportunities which were on number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 10 for Friday evening. But you chose to be a part of BIMTech and HRD and Deloitte initiative. Our heartfelt thanks to each one of you. Thank you so much for joining us. And let's hear a big round of applause for each one of you, please. So once again, thank you indeed. And with this, I hand over the proceedings to Dr. Manusi Chaudhary, please. Over to Dr. Chaudhary.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. May I now request Dr. Chaturvedi and Professor Akhil Pandey, Chairperson, Center for Management Development and Consulting at BIMTech, to please felicitate our honored experts today. We'll follow the same alphabetical order one more time, and therefore we begin with you, Anjali. Thank you. These are wonderful Tanjavur paintings created by Mrs. Chitra Sinha, wife of Professor K.K. Sinha. Next is Dr. Jayant Kumar. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Keith D'Souza. Thank you. Dr. Rajan Saxena, please. Thank you, sir. Mr. Rajiv Dubey. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Vyas, for leading this panel today. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the conclave. I'm sure that for each one of us, this program was an insightful and enriching experience. It is my proud privilege now to invite you all for dinner and cocktail outside. Wish you all a wonderful evening. May I request the organizing team to please join us here for a group photograph? BIMTech. Yeah, he's also part of the organizing team.